Oh, you imps are worse than the Deveals, Istvan scowled.
That's a given, Frumple commented dryly. Now look, Frumple, Higgins began angrily. As to who this figure is,
Frumple pointed to Quigley, ignoring the imps.
That is Garkin's apprentice. He's the one who's been handling the magic for our pervert since he lost his powers.
Really? Asked Istvan eagerly. Can you do the cups and balls trick? I love the cups and balls trick. I don't understand, mumbled Quigley vacantly, backing away from the assemblage. Well, if we were ever going to have a diversion, it would have to be now. Closing my eyes, I changed Quigley's features. The obvious choice for his disguise was me.
See, said Frumple, pointing proudly. I told you so.
Throckwaddle, exclaimed the two imps simultaneously.
What?
Said Frumple, narrowing his eyes suspiciously. I was ready for them. As the exclamations rose, I changed Quigley again. This time, I gave him Throckwaddle's features. Why, it is Throckwaddle, cried Istvan. Oh, that's funny.
Wait a minute, Brockhurst hissed. How could you be Throckwaddle when we turned you into a statue before we caught up with Throckwaddle?
This set Istvan off into even greater peals of laughter. Stop! He called, breathless. Oh, stop! Oh, my ribs hurt. Oz, you've outdone yourself this time. It's nothing, really, Oz acknowledged modestly.
There's something wrong here, Frumple declared.
He plunged a hand deep into his robe, never taking his eyes from Quigley. Almost too late, I realized what he was doing. He was going for his crystal, the one that let him detect disguises. As the glittering bauble emerged, I swung into action. A simple levitation, a small flick with my mind, and the crystal popped out of Frumple's grasp and plopped into the wine jug.
Frammits!
Frumple swore, starting to fish for his possession. Get your hands out of the wine, Frumple, Oz chided, slapping his wrist. You'll get your toy when we finish the jug. As if to illustrate his point, he hefted the jug and began refilling the flagons around the table. Enough of this insanity! Quigley exploded. I winced at the use of the word insanity, but Istvan didn't seem to mind. He merely leaned forward to watch Quigley. I am neither Skeeve nor Throckwaddle, Quigley continued. I am Quigley, demon hunter extraordinaire. Let any dispute who dare, and man or demon, I'll show him who I am. This proved too much for Istvan, who actually collapsed in laughter. Oh, he's funny, Oz, he gasped. Where did you find this funny man? You sent him to me, remember? Oz prompted. Why, so I did, Istvan mused, and even this fact he seemed to find hysterically funny. The others were not so amused.
So, you're a demon hunter, eh?
Frumple snarled.
What's your gripe, anyway?
The offenses of demons are too numerous to list, Quigley retorted haughtily.
We aren't going anywhere for a while, Brockhurst chimed in from the stairs, and neither are you. List us a few of these offenses.
Well, began Quigley, you stole my magic pendant and my magic sword.
We don't know anything about a magic pendant, Higgins bristled. And we gave your so-called magic sword to... What else do demons do?
Frumple interrupted, apparently none too eager to have the discussion turn to swords. Well, you bewitched my war unicorn into thinking he's a dragon, Quigley challenged.
Your war unicorn is currently tethered in the stable, Higgins said flatly. Frumple brought him in.
My unicorn is tethered outside the door, Quigley insisted, and he thinks he's a dragon.
Your unicorn is tethered in the stable,
Higgins barked back.
"And we think you're a fruitcake."
Gentlemen, gentlemen! Istvan managed to hold up his hands despite his laughter. All this is quite amusing, but... Well, will you look at that? This last was said in such a tone of wonder that the attention of everyone in the room was immediately drawn to the spot he was looking at. Suspended in mid-air, not 2 handspans from Istvan's head, was a small red dart with gold and black fletchings. An assassin's dart! Istvan marveled, gently plucking the missile from where it was hovering. Now who would be naughty enough to try and poison me from behind? His eyes slowly moved to Brockhurst, sitting casually on the stairs. Brockhurst suddenly realized he was the object of everyone's attention. His eyes widened in fright.
"No, Wait, Istvan!"
He half rose, holding out a hand as if to ward off a blow.
"I didn't. No, don't. Glag!"
This last was said as his hands suddenly flew to his throat and began choking him violently. Glag! He fell back on the stairs and began rolling frantically back and forth.
"Istvan,"
Higgins began hesitantly.
"Normally I wouldn't interfere, but don't you think you should hear what he has to say first?"
"But I'm not doing anything." Istvan blinked with hurt innocence. My eyes flashed to the other end of the mezzanine. Tanda was crouched there, her eyes closed. She seemed to be choking an invisible person on the floor in front of her. With dawning realization, I began to appreciate more and more the subtleties of a trained assassin.
"You aren't doing anything,"
Higgins shrilled.
"Well then, do something. He's dying."
I thought for a moment that the ludicrous statement would set Istvan to laughing again, but not this time. "Oh," he sighed, "this is all so confusing. Yes, I guess you're right." He clicked his fingers, and Brockhurst stopped thrashing about and began breathing again in long, ragged breaths. "Here, old boy," said Oz. "Have some wine." He offered Brockhurst a brimming flagon, which the imp began to gulp gratefully. "Oz," Istvan said sternly, "I don't think you've been honest with us." "Me?" Oz asked innocently. "Even you couldn't have caused this much havoc without assistance. Now where is it coming from?" He closed his eyes and turned his face toward the ceiling for a moment. "Ah," he suddenly proclaimed. "Here it is." There was a squawk from the other end of the mezzanine, and Tanda was suddenly lifted into view by unseen hands. "Higgins!" exclaimed Istvan. "Another one! Well, well, the day is full of surprises." Tanda held her silence as she was floated down to a chair on a level with the others. "Now let's see," Istvan mumbled to himself. "Have we missed anybody?" I felt the sudden pressure of invisible forces and realized I was next. I tried desperately to think of a disguise, but the only thing that came to mind was Gleep, so I tried it. "The dragon!" cried Brockhurst as I floated into view. "Gleep," I said, rolling my eyes desperately. "Oh, now that's too much," Istvan pouted. "I want to see who I'm dealing with." He gave a vacant wave of his hand, and the disguises disappeared. All of them. I was me, Quigley was Quigley, Tanda was Tanda, the imps were imps, and the Deville was a Deville. Oz, of course, was Oz. Apparently, a moratorium had been declared on disguises by a majority of one. Istvan. I came drifting down to join the others, but my entrance was generally ignored in the other proceedings. "Tanda!" Istvan cried enthusiastically. "Well, well, this is a reunion, isn't it?" "Bark at the moon, Istvan," Tanda snarled defiantly. Quigley was looking at everyone else with such speed I thought his head would fall off. "I don't understand," he whimpered plaintively. "Shut up, Quigley," Oz growled. "We'll explain later."
"That's assuming there is a later,"
Frumple sneered. I tended to agree with Frumple. The atmosphere in the room no longer had even the semblance of joviality. It was over. We had lost. We were all exposed and captured, and Istvan was as strong as ever. Whatever Oz's secret weapon was, it apparently hadn't worked. "Well, I'm afraid all good things must come to an end," Istvan sighed, draining his flagon. "Now I'm afraid I'll have to dispose of you." He sounded genuinely sad, but somehow I couldn't muster any sympathy for his plight. "Just one question before we begin, Oz," he said in surprisingly sane tones. "What's that?" Oz responded. "Why did you do it? I mean, with as feeble a team as this, how did you possibly hope to beat me?" Istvan sounded genuinely sincere. "Well, Istvan," Oz drawled, "that's a matter of opinion." "What's that supposed to mean?" Istvan asked suspiciously. "I don't hope we can beat you," Oz smiled. "I know we can." "Really?" Istvan chuckled. "And upon what are you basing your logic?" "Why, I'm basing it on the fact that we've already won." Oz blinked innocently. "It's all over, Istvan, whether you realize it or not." Chapter 25. Just because you've beaten a sorcerer doesn't mean you've beaten a sorcerer. Tothaman. "Oz," Istvan said sternly, "there comes a time when even your humor wears a little thin." "I'm not kidding, Istvan," Oz assured him. "You've lost your powers. Go ahead, try something. Anything." Istvan hesitated. He closed his eyes. Nothing happened. "You see?" Oz shrugged. "You've lost your powers. All of them. And don't look to your associates for help. They're all in the same boat." "You mean we've really won?" I blurted out, the full impact of what was transpiring finally starting to sink in. "That's right, kid." Oz suddenly leaned forward and clapped Frumple on the shoulder. "Congratulations, Frumple," he exclaimed. "I've got to admit I didn't think you could do it." "What?" blinked the Deville. "I'm just glad this squares our debt with you," Oz continued without pause. "You won't try to back out on it now, will you?" "Frumple," Istvan's voice was dark with menace. "Did you do this to us?" I... Frumple stammered. "Go ahead, Frumple, gloat," Oz encouraged. "He can't do anything to you now. Besides, you can teleport out of here any time you want." "No, he can't," snarled Higgins, and his arm flashed forward. I caught a glimpse of a small ball flying through the air before it exploded against Frumple's forehead in a cloud of purple dust. "But—" began Frumple, but it was too late. In mid-gesture his limbs became rigid and his face froze. We had another statue on our hands. "Good move, Higgins," applauded Oz. "If it wouldn't be too much trouble, Oz," interrupted Istvan, "could you explain what's going on here?" "Ah," said Oz, "therein lies the story." "This sounds familiar," Quigley mumbled. I poked him in the ribs with my elbow. We weren't out of this yet. "It seems that Frumple learned about your plans from Throckwaddle. Apparently he was afraid that if you succeeded in taking over the dimensions, you would implement price controls, thereby putting him out of business as a merchant. You know how those Devilles are." The imps snorted. Istvan nodded thoughtfully. Anyway, he decided to try to stop you. To accomplish this, he blackmailed the four of us into assisting him. We were to create a diversion, while he effected the actual attack.
Well, what did he do? Prompted Higgins.
He drugged the wine, explained Oz. Don't you remember?
When?
Asked Brockhurst. When he dropped that phony crystal into the jug, remember?
But he drank from the jug, too, exclaimed Higgins.
That's right, but he had taken an antidote in advance, Oz finished with a flourish.
So, we're stuck here. Brockhurst spat in disgust.
You know, Oz, Istvan said slowly, it occurs to me that even if everything happened exactly as you described it, you and your friends here played a fairly large part in the plot. You're right, Istvan, Oz admitted, but I'm prepared to offer you a bargain. What kind of a bargain? Istvan asked suspiciously. It's in two parts. First, to clear Tanda and myself from having opposed you in your last bid for power, I can offer transportation for you and your allies out of this dimension. Said Istvan. And the second part? For the second part, I can give you the ultimate vengeance to visit on Frumple here. In exchange, I want your promise you'll bear no grudge against the four of us for our part in today's misfortune. Pardon for four in exchange for vengeance on one? Istvan grunted. That doesn't sound like much of a deal. I think you're overlooking something, Istvan, Oz cautioned. What's that? You've lost your powers. That makes it four of us against three of you.
Look at your four, Brockhurst sneered. A woman, a half-trained apprentice, a broken-down demon hunter, and a pervert.
Broken down? Quigley scowled. Easy, Quigley. And you too, Tanda, Oz ordered. Your three are nothing to brag about either, Brockhurst. Two imps who've lost their powers, and a fat madman. Surprisingly, this seemed to revive Istvan's humor. The imps were not amused.
Now look, Oz, Higgins began. If you want a fight...
You missed the point entirely, gentlemen, Oz said soothingly. I'm trying to avoid a fight. I'm merely trying to point out that if this comes to a fight, you'll lose.
Not necessarily, Brockhurst bristled.
Inescapably, Oz insisted. Look, if we fight and we win, you lose. On the other hand, if we fight and we lose, you lose.
How do you figure that?
Higgins asked suspiciously. Simple, said Oz smugly. If you kill us, you'll have lost your only way to get out of this dimension. You'll be stuck forever on Claw. By my figuring, that's losing.
We're in agreement there, Brockhurst mumbled.
Oh, stop this bickering, Istvan interrupted with a chuckle. Oz is right, as usual. He may have lost a couple of fights, both magical and physical, but I've never heard of anyone out-arguing him. Then it's a deal? Oz asked. It's a deal, Istvan said firmly, as if we had any choice in the matter. They shook hands ceremoniously. I noticed the imps were whispering together and shooting dark glances in our direction. I wondered if a deal with Istvan was binding on the imps. I wondered if a handshake was legally binding in a situation such as this. But most of all, I wondered what Oz had up his sleeve this time. Well, Oz, Istvan asked, where is this escape clause you promised? Right here, Oz said, fishing a familiar object from inside his shirt and tossing it to Istvan. A D-hopper! Istvan cried with delight. I haven't seen one of these since...
What is it?
Higgins interrupted. Istvan scowled at him. It's our ticket off this dimension, he exclaimed grudgingly.
How does it work?
Brockhurst asked suspiciously. Trust me, gentlemen. Istvan's distasteful expression gave lie to the joviality of his words. It works. He turned to Oz again. Imps, he mumbled to himself. You hired 'em, Oz commented unsympathetically. So I did. Well, what is this diabolical vengeance you have in mind for Frumple? That's easy, smiled Oz. Use the D-hopper and take him back to Diva. Why Diva? Istvan asked.
Because he's been banned from Diva, Higgins answered, the light dawning, and the Devils are unequaled at meting out punishment to those who break their laws. Brockhurst finished with an evil smile. Why was Frumple banned from Diva? Tonda whispered to me. I don't know, I confided. Maybe he gave a refund or something. I don't believe it, she snorted. I mean, he is a Devil. Oz, Istvan smiled, regarding the D-hopper. I've always admired your sense of humor, even if it's nastier than mine. What do you expect from a pervert? Snorted Brockhurst. Watch your mouth, imp, I snarled. He was starting to get on my nerves. Then it's settled, Istvan chortled, clapping his hands together gleefully. Brockhurst, Higgins, come gather around Frumple here. We're off to Diva. Right now? Asked Brockhurst. With things here so unsettled? Higgins added, glancing at us again. Oh, we won't be long, Istvan assured them. There's nothing here we can't come back and pick up later. That's true, admitted Brockhurst, staring at me thoughtfully. Istvan? It was Quigley. Are you addressing me? Istvan asked with mock formality. Yes. Quigley looked uncomfortable. Am I to understand you are all about to depart for some place completely populated with demons? That is correct, Istvan nodded. Would you mind if I accompanied you? What? I exclaimed, genuinely startled. Why? Well, Quigley said hesitantly, if there is one thing I have learned this day, it's that I really know very little about demons. Hear, hear, mumbled Oz. I am undecided as to whether or not to continue in my chosen profession, Quigley continued, but in any case, it behooves me to learn more about demons. What better place could there be for such study than in a land completely populated with demons? Why should we burden ourselves with a demon hunter of all things? Brockhurst appealed to Istvan. Maybe we could teach him a few things about demons, Higgins suggested in an overly innocent voice, giving his partner a covert poke in the side. What? You know you're right, Higgins. Brockhurst was suddenly smiling again. Good, exclaimed Istvan. We'll make a party of it. In that case, purred Tonda, you won't mind if I tag along too. What? Exclaimed Brockhurst. Why? Challenged Higgins. To help, of course, she smiled. I want to be there when you teach Quigley about demons. Maybe I can help him learn. Wonderful, wonderful, Istvan beamed, overriding the imp's objections. The more the merrier. Oz, Skeeve, will you be joining us? Not this time, thanks, Oz replied before I could open my mouth. The kid here and I have a few things to go over that won't wait. Like what? I asked. Shut up, kid, Oz hissed, then smiled again at the group. You all run along. We'll be here when you come back. We'll be looking forward to it. Brockhurst smiled grimly. Goodbye, Oz, Skeeve, Tonda waved. I'll look for you next time around. But, Tonda, I began. Don't worry, lad, Quigley assured me. I'll make sure nothing happens to her. Behind him, Tanda shot me a bawdy wink. Oz, Istvan chuckled. I do enjoy your company. We must work together more often. He adjusted the settings on the D-hopper and prepared to trigger it. Goodbye, Istvan, Oz smiled and waved. Remember me. There was a rippling in the air, and they were gone. All of them. Oz, I said urgently, did you see how those imps looked at us? Oh, yeah, kid. I told you they were vicious little creatures. But what are we going to do when they get back? Don't worry about it, kid. Don't worry about it, I shrieked. We've got to... Because they aren't coming back, Oz finished. That stopped me. But when they get done on Diva... That's the joke, kid. Oz grinned at me. They aren't going to Diva. Chapter 26. A woman, like a good piece of music, should have a solid end. Franz Schubert. They aren't going to Diva. I was having a rough time dealing with the concept. That's right, kid, Oz said, pouring himself some more wine. But Istvan set the D-hopper himself. Yeah, Oz grinned smugly. But last night I made one extra preparation for this sortie. I changed the markings on the dials. Then where are they going? Beats me, Oz shrugged, taking a deep draught of the wine. But I'm betting it'll take them a long time to find their way back. There are a lot of settings on a D-hopper. But what about Tanda and Quigley? Tanda can take care of Quigley, Oz assured me. Besides, she has the powers to pull them out any time she wants. She does? Sure, but she'll probably have a few laughs just tagging along for a while. Can't say as I blame her. I'd love to see Quigley deal with a few dimensions myself. He took another generous gulp of the wine. Oz, I cried in sudden realization. The wine! What about it? Oh, don't worry, kid, he smiled. I've already lost my powers, remember? Besides, you don't think I'd drug my own wine, do you? You drugged the wine? Yeah. That was my secret weapon. You didn't really believe all that bunk about Frumple, did you? Of course not, I said, offended. Actually, even though I knew Frumple hadn't done it, I had completely lost track of actually who had done what and to whom. Here, kid. Oz handed me his flagon and picked up the jug. Have some yourself. You did pretty good this afternoon. I took the flagon, but somehow couldn't bring myself to drink any. What did you put in the wine anyway? I asked. Joke powder, Oz replied. As near as I can tell, it's the same stuff Garkin used on me. You can put it in a drink, sprinkle it over food, or burn it and have your victim inhale the smoke. I had a sudden flash recollection of the brazier billowing smoke as Oz materialized. What does it do? Weren't you paying attention, kid? Oz cocked his head at me. It takes away your powers. Permanently? Of course not, Oz scoffed. Only for a century. What's the antidote? There isn't one. At least I couldn't get the stall proprietor to admit to having one. Maybe, when you get a little better with the magic, we'll go back to Diva and beat an answer out of him. I thought for a few minutes. That seemed to answer all my questions. Except one. Say, Oz? Yeah, kid. What do we do now? About what? Oz asked. I mean, what do we do? We've been spending all the time since we met getting ready to fight Istvan. Well, it's over. Now what do we do?
What you do, apprentice, Oz said sternly, is devote your time to your magic. You've still got a long way to go before you're even close to master status. As for me, well, I guess most of my time will be spent teaching you. He poured a little more wine down his throat. Actually, we're in pretty good shape, he stated. We've got a magic crystal courtesy of Frumple, and that crummy sword if we search his gear. And a malfunctioning fire ring, I prompted. Said Oz. Actually, I gave the ring to Tanda. Gave? I asked. You gave something away? Oz shrugged. I'm a soft touch. Ask anybody. I said. We've, also got a war unicorn if we want to go anywhere, Oz hastened on. And that stupid dragon of yours. Gleep isn't stupid, I insisted hotly. Okay, Oz amended. Your intelligent, personable dragon. That's better, I mumbled. Even though it beats me why we'd want to go anyplace, Oz commented, looking around him. This place seems sound enough. You'd have some good force lines to play with, and the wine cellar will be well stocked if I know Istvan. We could do lots worse for a base of operations. Another question occurred to me. Say, Oz. Yeah, kid. A few minutes ago you said you wanted to see Quigley when he visited other dimensions, and you seem to have a weak spot for Tanda. Yeah, Oz growled. So why didn't you go along with them? You didn't have to get stranded in this dimension. Istvan's a fruitcake, Oz declared pointedly, and I don't like imps. You think I'd like having them for traveling companions? But you said Tanda could travel the dimensions by herself. Couldn't you and she have... All right, interrupted Oz. You want me to say it? I stayed here because of you. Why? Because you're not up to traveling the dimensions yet. Not until you... I mean, why stay with me at all? Why? Because you're my apprentice, that's why. Oz seemed genuinely angry. We made a deal, remember? You help me against Istvan and I teach you magic. Well, you did your part and now I'm going to do mine. I'm going to teach you magic if it kills you. Or me, which is more probable. Yes, Oz, I agreed hastily. Besides, he mumbled, taking another drink, I like you. Excuse me? I said. I didn't quite hear that. Then pay attention, Oz barked. I said drink your wine and give some to that stupid dragon of yours. I will allow you count it one night of celebration. Then bright and early tomorrow, we start working in earnest. Yes, Oz, I said obediently. And kid, Oz grinned. Don't worry about it being boring. We don't have to go looking for adventure. In our profession, it usually comes looking for us. I had an ugly feeling. He was right.
The End. You've been listening to Another Fine Myth by Robert Asprin, narrated by Jeff Woodman. You'll find a wide selection of titles including bestsellers, mysteries, classics, histories, and more in the Recorded Books catalog. So to order another recorded book or for a copy of our latest listing, call us toll-free nationwide at 1-800-638-1304. You can order by phone with Visa or MasterCard, or by writing to us, or by faxing us at 410-535-5499. Don't forget to ask about easy 30-day rentals by mail. And thank you for being a Recorded Books reader.